All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Degenerate NFL podcast. Zach is joining me again today. I'm glad to have you back, Zach. We did the AFC West last episode. I got the Raiders guys on. That was very fun. Had Casey on before that to do the NFC West. And now we're in the last two divisions here, which will hopefully all be completed before the season kicks off on Thursday. I'm working on that currently. But we'll at least get the NFC North out of the way here, potentially, and should be the best division in the NFL this year if we're looking at all
One of
these
them.
teams.
One of them.
At least one of them. But I would put money on this division to be the most quality football we get for multiple reasons. And that was helped recently, by the way. We've talked about it on two different shows now. But we probably need to talk about it even before we get to this team in a little bit. But the Packers made the huge move to get Micah Parsons from the Cowboys. And the Cowboys' infinite wisdom, really Jerry Jones' infinite wisdom, I suppose, but still, decided to trade away a mid-20s superstar player, which just doesn't happen in the NFL unless, I guess, you're the Cowboys who did that. We'll talk more about it specifically for the Packers when we get to them in a little bit. But how did you feel, Zach, other than probably just like hilarity of the situation outside of that? How did you feel about the move?
At first, I would say I was a little shocked.
Yeah.
And especially given what happened in the NBA with Luka and like his back-to-back Dallas, like
God,
for them. However, I've come around on it a little bit just from some things that I've heard.
Okay.
And I'll get into maybe more of my criticism on the Packers part when we get a bit more into the Packers stuff. Apparently he was not the most liked amongst the Dallas locker room by some
I can't
people.
imagine he would be. Yeah. He can be. So.
Well, and apparently it's mostly tied to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like apparently Dak is not the biggest fan of him. So that's kind of hard, even though you are the best player on the team. Like Dak is still the quarterback, and while Micah might be the best, he's not the most important player. So like you can't keep your quarterback happy, which like it's still Dak Prescott. Like it just might not be as much of a drive to get that contract done and just be like, okay, well, there's other voices in the locker room that are like, maybe it's fine if he goes away. So Jerry was able to convince himself, but it's still kind of crazy when you talk about the talent. And then the whole epidural thing, we'll see how that actually progresses, because that is a little concerning, especially no matter what your age is. When you're talking about the back and the spine, that's nothing to mess with, and that can start to get a little funky. Yeah. But as if that's not an issue, then I mean, the Packers basically took themselves from a playoff contender to a Super Bowl contender. So
yeah, that's my thing ultimately. We'll get more into it when we get to the Packers part of the show. But for me, this is as easy of a move as there is to making the NFL. If someone of Micah Parsons' quality is on the market and it doesn't take your entire team to trade for him, you do it. Like you just have to, especially if you're a team that's already good, right?
It took a couple of first-round picks after the Packers did something that they never do, which, okay, go ahead and get rid of them. And Kenny Clark.
Yeah. Again, Clark's been a really good player for the Packers.
He's been a great player, but for Micah Parsons?
Yeah, he also has declined a little bit in recent years. He's not quite the pass rusher he once was. This, assuming that the addition of Parsons, one, is you get a healthy version of him, and two, he's as good as we think he could be, it opens up the rest of those guys who, admittedly, last year couldn't get a pass rush going at all. Now Rashawn Gary's your number two. Lucas Van Ness is your number three. Like, you're living a good world if that's your situation in the NFL. Even if it wasn't quite Micah Parsons as your number one, right? But now that he's that level player next to those guys, it's gonna be interesting. We'll talk about it definitely more in detail when we get to them. But we're gonna be starting with Chicago Bears, mostly because we are just doing in the order of the teams from the records last year, but more importantly because of how much they accomplished this offseason. And the Bears have been known to kind of be these offseason champions in recent years and like doing all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I get that. This is fundamentally different in the way that they've done it, for a lot of reasons, but it's mostly because of who's now calling the shots for this team. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, full culture reset.
Yeah, we're going to start there. The coaching staff changes for this team. They're obviously very well known. Ben Johnson's now the head coach of the Bears. coming over from the Lions, being their offensive coordinator for the past couple seasons, and doing about as good of a job as you possibly could in that role, right? Like we've seen the Lions become a true juggernaut offensively, especially, and he has a lot to do with that, with his play calling and the way he teaches his offense. So he comes over to be the head coach here. He brings along with him, and we'll start with the defensive coordinator here because I think it's the more interesting hire. Brings in former Saints head coach Dennis Allen, who is very well known for being one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. Just couldn't quite hack it as a head coach, as a lot of those guys can't. He now gets to focus on the defense, and he has plenty of talent on that side of the ball to work with. So that should be very fun. And for the offensive coordinator role, which with this team is a little bit, anytime you have an offensive head coach, the offensive coordinator role can be a little bit suspect in terms of like what do they actually do, like what are their role, what do they do. Declan Doyle comes over from the Broncos, probably trying to steal some ideas from Sean Payton, who is a good person to steal ideas from if you can do it. So I like that move as well. But this coaching staff feels much more like NFL caliber, frankly, and more importantly, the right direction when you just drafted a quarterback first overall this year, and he kind of looked like he was seeing ghosts because of how bad it was for him with that offense.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like the offensive coordinator situation with Shane Waldron and all that was just a disaster.
3 different ones throughout the year. It doesn't get much worse than what it was.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Eberflus was already on the hot seat going into last season. You were wondering, like, why did they really stick around with him all that often? Like, they probably could have cut ties, but he was able to make it through, whatever. But what we saw with Ben Johnson was something that we don't see too often, was a coach who said, no, even though I'm getting calls to be a head coach, I'm going to stick it out for a couple years. I want to be a part of what's going on right now. And like, could he have stayed another year with Detroit? Maybe.
But yeah, he definitely could have. It's just
I mean, that was churning, but the offers were just too much to pass up on now. And you have a fit with an organization that is a bit storied, not necessarily storied in like all that much success, but like historical success. Yeah. And you want to build them back up to what they were maybe in like the early to mid 2000s, going back to what, the 80s, 70s. I don't really know about the Bears.
80s mostly, yeah, is when they kind of had their peak, but yeah.
But you have this opportunity with all that you have. So Ben Johnson sees this perfect opportunity. And I think it makes a lot of sense. The Dennis Allen hire, I think, is fantastic. And as somebody who should have been fired for their head coaching a year prior as well, no, Dennis Allen thrives as a defensive coordinator. I think that was a fantastic decision. But I don't know, like you said, I don't know much about Declan Doyle, but it might be just trying to steal some stuff from Peyton, like merge ideas and all that. But I mean, I think the bigger thing here is watching an offensive coach flounder a bit with Miami. If you nail your defense and make sure that you're solid there, you can take the time to then focus on the offense and not have to worry as much, even though you still need to have an actual hand in it.
Yeah, I think he made a really smart decision by going and getting a guy who is not just a really good defensive coordinator just in general, but a guy who has been in the head coaching chair before and can tell him some of the things that maybe were pitfalls for him that did cause him to have to struggle with the Saints and with the Raiders previously, right? Where you get that element of really the benefit of both worlds. You get a really good defensive coordinator and a guy who is probably not going to get another head coaching job anytime soon. So if he hits, he is going to be able to stick around there, and it's not going to be something that they have to switch out a bunch like you see with offensive coordinators typically. So it should be very good for him. And again, Doyle, we'll see what he does. Maybe he sticks around for a while and ends up getting a job elsewhere, but mostly focused on the head coach hire and the defensive coordinator hire there for sure. So let me just pull something up here real quick for you. Okay. Now let's do the offensive moves for this team. I think it's very interesting that as soon as Ben Johnson gets on board, basically, right, Ryan Poles is like, all right, we're not screwing around anymore. Like, we're going to fix the one thing that has probably been the Achilles heel of this team outside of the quarterback play itself, but it's part of why the quarterback play has been the way it's been. This offensive line is getting fixed like yesterday. Like, we're not messing around. So let's start with what they did there. We'll start with losses there, really. Like, so they did lose Keenan Allen, which he was very productive, but probably in spite of them more so than anything else. He kind of just got fed the ball a lot for probably no reason. Realistically, should have been getting targets to the younger guys. Gerald Everett at tight end is gone. Coleman Shelton, who didn't work out, is gone at center. Tevin Jenkins, Matt Pryor, Larry, a bunch of depth / starting guys along the offensive line out of the door here to make room for the guys we'll talk about in a second. But they did bring in new backup quarterback, who's really now, I guess, the third quarterback with Case Keenum, because Tyson Bagent is the backup there, really. He got a nice deal as well. So he's kind of just there to really be more of a coach at this point, let's be real. Bringing Olamide Zaccheaus as a wide receiver 4-3. We'll see how that works out. Kick returner, Devin Duvernay, really just a kick returner at this point. Blocking tight end, Durham Smythe. And then this is where you get the trio of new offensive line starters. Drew Dahlman at center, coming over from the Falcons. Joe Thuney, one of the best guards of his generation. Now, not maybe quite the same player he was, 4 or 5 years ago, but still one of the better. It's still one of the better pass protectors specifically, which is big for this team. And Jonah Jackson, who is the wild card of those three. I think Dahlman, you kind of know what you're getting as a good center. Thuney should still be a good player, even if he's aging. Jackson is the one where if he gets back to the Detroit level that he was at, where he was a fringe Pro Bowler, especially as a run blocker, this interior trio could be very, very good.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of really cool to see, I think Poles, I'm willing to give people second chances, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think finally what this is like, again, I like to make comparisons to the team that I'm a fan of. And if
it's easy
I'm sitting here as Chris Greer and I watch myself do the same thing over and over again and not get anywhere, yet I still have my job, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Poles is feeling some heat now, and he's like, oh no, I have to actually change what I'm doing. And he went out and he got the trenches. He fixed it. He fixed that offensive line. It was horrible last year, and really, really down to the wire of why the offense didn't work, because they couldn't let anything develop. There was nothing available for Caleb Williams. We saw some flashes, but that was winning at the time. And it was just horrible last season. And you have to give your young offense and your young signal caller some time to learn and play football and not have the line just crumble at every opportunity. So it was nice to see them actually sit there and really address the issue that needed to be addressed and address the elephant in the room and be like, look, we want to give them a chance, but we have to do that by getting some protection first.
Yeah, we have Dalton joining the group today. Dalton, we're talking about the Bears currently, and we went over the coaching changes. If you want to throw anything out there about your thoughts on Ben Johnson, you definitely can. And then we're talking about specifically the offensive moves, the additions with the trio of interior players right now. So
I figured I'd hop on a mid-fantasy draft.
Love it.
Looking for something to do. But yeah, I like the Ben Johnson move. I mean, it's hard not to like Johnson hire. But I do wonder how it's going to be, because, Ben Johnson had a very veteran quarterback.
He did.
And a very veteran offense in general. This is the opposite. This is one of the younger offenses in the league, and a quarterback that is very much a developmental quarterback. And I think that is going to be that might be a bit of an issue.
I think especially to start the season, I could see it taking some time,
And the offensive line, I like, I'm glad they did something with it. I'm still kind of waiting to see. I feel like it was so bad last year. It's just hard to imagine it being so much better than it was. And the guys they're bringing in, you're relying a lot on Joe Thuney to come in and still be the same Joe Thuney that he was, a decade ago. It's just tricky. I don't know. I'm optimistic for the offense. I think the best thing that's going to happen for the Bears offense is the players that they got last year. People like Caleb Johnson and Caleb Williams and Roma Odunze developing. That's really going to be the key to that offense.
Yeah, and again, I think with the moves they made, they wanted to make sure that at the very least it wasn't going to be the reason that the offense doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think you bring these guys in assuming that health is not a huge problem for these guys, and they have some depth that you can rely on a little bit or that you're excited about. Like Ozzie Trapillo is a draft pick. We'll talk about him in a second. But in general, I think this line should be at least it's going to be one of those offensive lines I think at worst is going to allow you to do what you want to do. It may not necessarily help you or be the driving force behind what you do, but it shouldn't prevent them from running the stuff they want to run. It's just how much of a bonus is it opposed to just being good, right? And then in the draft, they did add some talent as well. Colson Loveland, 10th overall. It was a little early for me personally, but I do see the vision of a player like this. I think they're going to use him not so much like Sam Laporta, but maybe honestly more like Amon-Ra St. Brown was used with the Lions, where he is that like true slot weapon and the ability to run down the seam, especially as the tight end. Like that'll be very fun to see if they can weaponize him early, or if he's going to take some time to get going, as most tight ends do. Luther Burden.
What is his size?
He's full size tight end. He's like 6'5", 245, 250, I think.
Yeah, he's
huge.
Is he just athletic?
Oh yeah, he's a good athlete.
My issue with the Loveland pick is just that Warren was still there.
Yes, I just think Warren's a better player. Maybe not also, the fit that he wanted, but still, it's a better player.
But I mean, they already have the fit that Loveland is. His name is Cole Kmet.
I don't think Cole Kmet's that good of a player, personally. I think he's fine. Like I think he's like.
Fair. I mean, Loveland's better. I think Loveland's going to be a better blocker than Kmet, especially.
Better athlete, yeah. So.
But at that point, why not just draft Tyler Warren?
I do agree. Like the Warren was a better prospect. I do think that what they were going for was the fit of the skill set more so than what Warren brings as an overall tight end, which I don't agree with in general. Like I think now, granted, if they didn't have a tight end that was playable as an inline tight end, I think that maybe the decision is different. But I think they wanted that specific like run after catch skill set, the athleticism at the position. I do think he's going to have a lot of the same routes and a lot of the same usage that St. Brown had for the Lions in just a different way. But that's kind of what I think the future for him is supposed to be there. I don't know if he'll be able to do that, but I think if you make good on him at 10th overall, you kind of have to have him be that productive. But go Zach.
They signed their inline tight end. That's their
that too. They have three. Like they have two actual tight ends, and then I think Loveland's going to be
that
mostly
is exactly why
mostly a slot players. I think what Loveland will be for them. They also draft. Luther Burden, who I liked him a good bit, but I do wonder, like, this is one of the situations, and I hate to even say this because, like, it sounds weird to say, but, like, at some point, I wonder if there's just too many guys to get the football to in the offense if all of them are good. Yeah. And it's like, okay, like, do we move on from DJ Moore and have Burden kind of become what he is? Because I think the skill set for that is there. You know, it is a little interesting to me if they're going to be able to get all these guys involved early on.
Yeah, well, because Moore's still fairly young, right?
I think he's 28 now or so, maybe.
Yeah, he was drafted.
So like he's not like he's definitely not like near the end of his career or anything like that. But and he is on a big contract still with them. But Burden kind of fits into that mold for me as that type of player, like really hard to tackle, big after the catch guy. Can stretch the field vertically a little bit, obviously, with the speed. I don't know how much he's going to play this year in terms of, like, especially actual production on the field, but it is another weapon to have out there that at least can stretch defenses a little bit. So we'll see what they can do with that. And then this one's most interesting to me because I wonder if there was some thought that it might be as early as this year, but it seems like that's died down. But Ozzie Trapillo at the back end of the second round as an offensive tackle, I do think that he's hopefully who they think is going to be the replacement for Braxton Jones when he inevitably gets like $25 million a year, because apparently that's what a good solid tackle will get in the market now is like $25 million a year. So they probably don't want to pay that. So like, we'll take Trapillo and put him in that spot and, you know, a season or so. So, and then I had to throw in Kyle Monangai, like, you know, he's every running back's favorite running back, I feel like. So I had to throw him in there. So he did make the team too. So good for him. But that's what they added through the draft on offense. Any guys you guys want to talk about in particular there?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. I mean, the extra weapons. I mean, I think really you're just hoping that something. I mean, obviously you have invested in Odunze and Williams, but you're just hoping that something sticks. Yeah. I mean, you brought Keenan Allen last year, and it worked, but
he was productive, but like kind of in like a sad way, in my opinion.
Yes, not how it was intended.
I don't think so. No.
And like who's the running back?
DeAndre Swift and Rashawn Johnson is the two top guys.
the ever like spinning revolver is kind of weird because last year you had Khalil Herbert as well. So you're just hoping that something sticks. And like you're giving them the weapons and all these things, and you're just hoping something sticks to where Williams feels comfortable. And I think that's why they're just like loading up, seeing what can we do, because you just want Williams to be as comfortable as he can.
Yeah. Any other thoughts you had there, Dalton, with the draft?
I mean, you guys kind of said it. I think, like you said, the big hope is just that some of these guys they've drafted over this past year and last year, they just need guys to pan out. I mean, they're just missing a lot of talent in this offense right now.
Yeah,
and if you bring in an offensive coach like Ben Johnson, you need to find guys for it to work.
Yeah, so let's see if they can.
Just don't let Jameson Williams throw the ball.
Well, luckily he can't. He's not here. Luther Burden will throw like a 40-yard pass at some point.
I think that's a guy that I do like Ben Johnson getting really creative with.
I do like that element of it. I just do wonder like how much of an impact will he have while DJ Moore is still on the roster, because I do just think that those two are very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Let's move to defensive moves here. So this is also pretty interesting offseason for me, because you definitely saw them lean into like what Dennis Allen specifically wants, specifically with the big edge rusher ad that they did in the draft, or not in the draft, in free agency. But we'll talk about that in a second. They lost a couple of backups at both interior and edge here. Byron Cowart, DeMarcus Walker at the interior spots, and Darrell Taylor and Jacob Martin at the edge spots. Both played reasonably well, especially off the edge for them, but that pass rush does need some juice. They lose Jack Sanborn, linebacker to the Cowboys, which he might actually be the best Cowboys linebacker, which is funny. They brought back T.J. Edwards on a new deal. Kyler Gordon was extended as well. They bring in Grady Jarrett on the interior, see what he still has left there. And the biggest addition I think they made, especially in terms of money on free agency, Dayo Diengbo from the Colts. If there's ever been a Dennis Allen edge, it's that dude. That he's literally like exactly what Dennis Allen loves. He's 270 plus, sort of a good pass rusher, but just heavy-handed as shit, just tries to run through dudes. That's a Dennis Allen pass rusher if I've ever seen one. So makes sense a lot for what he's trying to do. I don't know if I love that archetype generally, especially if he's maybe going to be your second best pass rusher outside of Sweat, but they like him, and I think that they wanted to bring him in. And in the draft, they bring in Shamar Turner, the other Shamar, Ruben Hippolyte, which was one of the strangest picks in the draft to me. He made the team. Good for him. Fast as shit, but didn't really have him on my radar personally. And then they bring in, unfortunately, who's going to miss the season, it looks like, Zoff Frazier, corner. I like some of the additions here, but really the excitement with this defense, I think, is what they already had and what they're hoping Dennis Allen will bring as a defensive coordinator here to kind of help get this along even more than maybe Eberflus did his first couple of years there.
Yeah, it's just again, trench investment. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. You have to start building a team in the trenches if you want to succeed, because it starts there. That's where the game starts. The ball is hiked from the center, and that's where you go. So like, if they got some more pieces, they're building it out to how Allen wants fit. And again, as long as you have a cohesive plan, because that's where the last couple of years, everybody's kind of sitting here before the Bears kind of got not necessarily gifted, but gifted Williams.
Yeah.
Just kind of fell in their lap. But like, everybody's sitting here like, what are you guys doing? What's going on? What's the trajectory forward here? And it's only been a very short off season, but you already see a different like trajectory in how the franchise is moving with Johnson in tow. So I'm interested to see how like all these really translate to the field and see how much the Bears can grow into this season with actually having some competent direction.
Yeah, like you said, you got to build from the trenches. And I think, while the moves aren't super splashy, I mean, these are guys that have been around, and they're guys that are going to at least, fill gaps and be solid, productive players on a defense that was not good last year. And I think that's the issue. Like they can't get run all over like they did last year.
No. Yeah. I think what they've done in the offseason has allowed them to be in a position where, assuming health, there's a good chance that your worst defensive starter is a corner with still a lot of potential in Tyreek Stevenson opposite of Jalen Johnson. If that's the case, and he's definitely a guy that is like Dennis Allen coded as a corner if I've ever seen one. Loves to be in press, good athlete. Like he should fit the scheme, so he should be a better player theoretically in the scheme than he's been in others with attitudes and stuff. If that's your worst starter, you're probably sitting pretty on defense. Like that's just probably what it's going to be. I do worry a little bit about the safety play because Byers getting up there and Brisker just doesn't play a lot of the time. But if he's healthy enough and plays 13-ish games or so, secondary should be really strong. And then you got to hope Grady Jarrett's got enough juice left to kind of play next to Dexter and hope that he can be enough there. But should be a really strong unit with them. Let's move on to expectations for the Bears. I want to kick things off here because I think the expectations for a team like this, that they continue to like theoretically win the offseason and then don't actually do anything with it, it starts to get to a point where like even like people who usually jump on the bandwagon of teams like this have started to kind of like be a little bit unsure of them. I think the expectation should just be to simply have a winning record and show that there is enough going on here with this roster that Ben Johnson's the guy, Caleb Williams is the quarterback. If you come away from the season thinking that about those guys, whatever the record ultimately ends up being, even if it is maybe still under 500, that's all that really matters. Like you have to think that both of those guys are the answers at those prospective spots. If they're not, or if you don't really feel confident about that after this year, that's when stuff starts to get a little bit hairy.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think the number one expectation is really, I don't think wins and losses are really a factor in expectations.
To a certain degree, yeah.
I think
you don't want to be bad, but
yeah. But you want to see that. I think you want to at least see that Ben Johnson's your coach. I mean, I think, even if Williams turns out to really not be it, you can, if you at least know that what you have in Ben Johnson is going to work.
Yeah.
And that the offense at least looks coherent and, it just turns out that Williams is holding them back. That's one thing. But, I mean, I think you just need to see some type of positives this year. I think that's the expectation, is that things are better than last year.
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what you're hoping for, is things are better. You see improvement. Williams isn't as scattered around the field. The offense is more driven, going down, like finishing drives is a big thing. There were so many points left on the field last season. I definitely think Ben Johnson's going to help in those situations because he's not going to make the stupid decisions that Eberflus was doing, and some of the just like you have timeouts. Why are you not taking them? So time management should change. So I definitely, you just want to see positive growth. You're not feasibly going to be competing with the other three teams in this division even if everything goes perfectly. You hope you do, but they're very good, so it's going to be tough. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into our win total range for this team. I think this is one of the tougher teams in the league to do this for, because theoretically, you want them to be a team that you look at it on paper just from a talent perspective, and with the upgrade at the coaching staff, it feels like a team that should be in the playoffs, but also they play in maybe the toughest division in the sport. So it's how do you balance that versus also a lot of question marks still unanswered until we get to see this team actually go out in the field and play real games? For me, I settled on, I think the floor is 7. I think that they're too talented of a team with a guy that I do believe in as a coach, and more importantly, defensive coordinator position being Dennis Allen, having a true veteran defensive coordinator with a veteran defensive group, just really raised the floor, I think, for me a lot. Where this offense wasn't very good last year at all, and they still weren't one of the worst teams in the NFL. They weren't great, but they weren't a bottom 5 team last year. I think they can at least get to 7 wins, even if things are rough on offense, and then I'll put the ceiling at 10. I think in this division, it's really hard to win more than that, especially if you're not dominating the rest of the teams outside of your division. And I don't think their schedule is quite that easy. So we'll see kind of how that shakes out. But playing 6 division games in this division is just tough. So I'll put it at 10 as the ceiling.
Yeah, I actually heavily agree with that. I don't think that this team is bad enough to lose more than 7 games to win less than 7 games just because they do get the last place schedule. So it's somewhat easier. You're going to have a couple of easier games on your schedule. But I also think with playing in the division, it's going to be tough. So that 7-10 is really perfect. There's a chance for them to sneak into the playoffs, I think. And probably if things go perfect, but that 7 win area 7-8 seems a bit more likely.
Yeah, I'm probably a little lower on the floor for them. I think 6 wins is the floor. I think it'll still be better than last year, but I mean, I'm not willing to give them more than a game. Just looking at their schedule, I mean, there aren't a ton of gimmies. I mean, in the NFL, there just really aren't that many. But also in their division, that fourth place schedule is a lot of teams that I think should also be better this year. So that's kind of what makes it tricky. But I mean, there's a few freebies. I think 6 is kind of the minimum. And I think 10 is a good ceiling for them. I think if things really go right, 10.
And one thing I'll note as well, and I'm glad about this as a Steelers fan, although I don't know how many touches I'll get early on. I wonder if I'd feel a little bit different about this team if Caleb Johnson was on it as the running back. Because Ben Johnson ran about as much outside zone as anyone in the NFL with the Lions last year, 3rd highest rate. That's obviously what Caleb Johnson does. And I don't know if I trust DeAndre Swift to be able to do that consistently with his vision issues. So we'll see about the running game. It'll be much better coached. I don't know how much better it will be overall with that running back group. Just want to throw that out there. The Green Bay Packers, man, have they done something recently? No. We kind of touched on it at the top of the show, Dalton, but we did talk a little bit about the Michael Parsons situation, which we'll talk more in depth about in a second. But let's talk about the coaching staff changes. Oh, wait, there isn't any. Because, of course, there isn't, because this is a very stable organization at this point, especially at the very top. So no notable coaching changes here as far as the top guys, right? There's every year you get a little bit of movement, the lower levels of the coaching staff, but nothing super notable there. Offensive moves. This is where you do have, especially in the draft in particular, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, where you do see a good bit of movement here. So they do lose a couple players, really just A.J. Dillon and Josh Myers, both of which kind of good riddance in my opinion. Myers was a fine center, but he wasn't anything special. They're going to get an upgrade just by moving guys over, frankly. So I don't really have a problem with that, with them losing him. Dillon was hurt all of last year and is maybe the slowest runner I've ever seen. So I don't know if I really care about that.
But his quads were so thick.
I know. That's what everyone loves. No. Just a total non-factor on offense for the most part. Early on in his career is fine, but not really anything to note there. They do bring back Emmanuel Wilson and wide receiver / cornerback. One of the funnier, interesting things going on in the NFL. Bo Melton is also back on this team. So that's fun. They signed Aaron Banks to a hilariously large contract in the offseason, despite having 3 guards who can play. I'm still not sure about that one, but hey, whatever. Then they draft my personal receiver one in this past draft class, Matthew Golden. In the first round, Anthony Belton, offensive tackle in the second round, and Savion Williams, who is, I guess, a receiver, but really is just, I would label him offense as a position in the third round. So notable moves on offense there. Dalton, how do you feel about the offensive changes to this team going into 2025?
I mean, I like the Golden pick just because they need someone that's at least got a shot to be a wide receiver, a true wide receiver one, because they just don't have one. They have a million number 2s.
They do. Yeah.
And Savion Williams is interesting just because it's a creative piece. Yeah. I think he is literally just Cordero Patterson reincarnate.
And if he is, that's well worth the third round.
The only thing is Cordero Patterson will block.
Yes.
Savion Williams will never, ever block.
Probably not.
He hates it. He has no interest in blocking, does not care about it at all. It's really sad. But, that's a whole other thing. But no, I mean, I like the additions they made. I mean, this is a team that didn't really have a lot of holes on offense. They just really needed to get they just needed to raise the ceiling, especially the passing game. Yeah. And I think someone like Golden really does that. And I think, possibly beefing up the offensive line a little bit, getting Jordan Love better protection, those things do that. I think that's really the biggest thing, is really raising the ceiling of this offense.
Yeah, Dalton nailed it on the head. Raise the ceiling of the offense and bring in somebody who is going to possibly be a wide receiver 1 in the sea of wide receiver 2s and 3s. I mean, like, I don't want to dismiss them because, you know, if you ask them, they say, "Oh no, we have wide receiver 1," but they don't.
No.
And so you need to do something. Who was that? Dobbs that said that?
I don't remember who. Here's
I think it was. He was like, "I'm the lead receiver," or whatever.
So here's the thing that I love about the Packers receiver room is not only do they have 4 wide receiver 2s, they have 4 entirely different kinds of wide receiver 2s. They have gadget like speed, run after catch threat. You find him in the backfield every so often in Jaden Reed. You have the like prototypical solid number 2 outside receiver Romeo Dobbs. They have Dontavian Wicks, who's very talented but doesn't know how to catch the fucking football. So you can't expect him to do much, but he will make plays when he has the opportunity to. And then you have Christian Watson, who doesn't play. But when he does, he catches 50-yard bombs and then dies. They literally have every type of wide receiver 2 you could ask for. But they don't have a 1. And then that's why I think the golden pick, again, do I think he's like the most high upside number 1 in the league or anything like that? No. But I do think like his very high-end outcome is like maybe either the middle tier of like Stephon Diggs before he was with the Bills, like that high end version of Vikings Stephon. Like that's what I think he could be in the NFL. If you get that, that's plenty good enough when you have 8 number 2s on the team, right? Like then, because then you can use those guys to their peak effectiveness, right? Then they don't have to be like the number 1 targets all the time. So that's definitely gonna be interesting to see. And then the offensive line, they have so many bodies here, and like they've always been so good at coaching these guys up and making it work. So like I'm not worried about it at all. But it's just funny. Like Zach Tom is phenomenal. He's maxed out at this point, but I think he's very comfortably one of the best right tackles in the NFL. Just maybe will never be the best, just because he does have some physical limitations. Elton Jenkins gets to play center, where I think he's going to be very, very good for them. Aaron Banks, you take him or leave him, but he's a starting guard. He can run block well, which this team wants to run the football a lot, even with the addition of receiver there. And Rasheed Walker is like he's very funny because I think he's the perfect example of like a tackle that is really good at one thing, and that is pass protecting. Can't run block for shit, but they don't really care because he keeps Jordan Love clean a lot of the time, so they're happy with it. And he was a 7th round pick. You'll take that every day of the week if you have a starting tackle in the 7th round. So I think this offense is really well set up to continue to be the top 10-ish or better unit they've been pretty much since Matt LaFleur got here, right? Like they've been able to keep that going really every year he's been here. The end of Aaron Rodgers' career, the beginning of Jordan Love's, like it hasn't really mattered. They've been able to make that continue to happen there. So I'm excited to see what they could do with Matthew Golden if he is able to live up to my expectations personally. So move on to the defensive moves, and there's a couple. There's one in particular that we'll definitely have to spend some time on, but they do lose a couple guys here. TJ Slayton, interior defensive lineman, really good nose tackle type that they no longer have. Eric Wilson was a solid backup linebacker for them. They do cut ties with Jair Alexander, who just could not stay healthy, unfortunately, but was one of the better corners in the league when he was. Eric Stokes, sorry, Dalton.
No, he's not good. He's not. Let's put it this way: he should not be your top corner by far.
Yeah, he's an NPC outside corner in my opinion, which is I guess fine. Yeah, and then they do bring back Isaiah McDuffie as linebacker depth. They sign Nate Hobbs. Nice
Great signing.
Yep, nice. Expected to play on the outside for them. Interesting, but still a good player.
Yeah.
And then
I don't like that. But.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. We got to talk about it. They trade for Micah Parsons. LOL, Jerry. So the defense was really good last year overall. If you look at the underlying metrics, if you just kind of look at their success rate in general, they didn't really have a pass rush though, especially with 4. Like they were able to bring pressure with 5. They were able to blitz effectively, but they really kind of relied on teams like just having to take what they can get and then getting a ton of turnovers from like Xavier McKinney and guys like that. Now with Parsons on board, I do wonder if this could be a top 5 defense in the NFL this year. Like I think that's the ceiling for this group with him on it. If he's healthy, obviously we know the back thing is going on, whatever. I think even with the secondary being a little bit suspect, especially at corner, I do think that they have the makings of a team that could finish in the top 5 in a lot of defensive categories at the very least this year.
My only question for the Packers is why did you have to, and I'm not necessarily saying overpay, but there was no reason to reset the market as harshly as they did when they could have probably brought that. The most paid player was $41 million. There's no reason you need to jump that to 47 a year. You could have gotten anywhere in between that. And I think with the questions that we are now having about Micah Parsons, not that he's not a great player, but the back thing is concerning. I'm sorry, that is concerning no matter what position you play, because it is your spine. If there's something going on with the back that you need an epidural, and I heard it framed perfectly earlier, the only time that we hear about an epidural in like regular life is when women are pregnant. And that is a level of pain that us as men have acknowledged we will never know. So we're talking about an epidural. that's substantial. And then also, I mean, I don't know if it's going to matter in Green Bay, but the whole personality thing is very interesting. I would like to see like what the stuff behind that is, and if it's solely just the podcast stuff, which that makes sense. These guys need to stop sitting in front of a mic for an hour straight answering questions. And if they want to, they need to start lying.
Lying.
Because because you can't sit there and when somebody asks you about Dak Prescott and you're on his team, you can't sit there and put him down. Like you can't say that he's not a top 5 quarterback because that's going to create resentment in your locker room and stuff like that.
I mean, I would argue that Dak needs to be realistic about himself.
Well, you're right, but
I'm just messing.
He thinks that he's delusional.
But that's the problem with, and like I was listening to Bomani Jones' podcast. This is the point that he was bringing up. It's like it's not like players weren't on radio and stuff like that. But it's different when you're just giving your unfiltered take on whatever. Yeah. And some of these guys need to realize that if they want to have these shows, they can't really do that to the extent that they want to do that without there being some sort of consequences on the back end. Because like I said, we weren't hearing any of this. And could it be some smear job? Absolutely. But like, apparently it's not just Dak. So like I'm interested to see more about what's going to happen here. But again, you didn't have to jump from 41 to 47. You could have put it at 44 or 45. That's my whole thing.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you on the whole Parsons thing. It's weird, like the whole situation now that like everything that's coming out. I mean, the attitude stuff, Shane, as you probably know, with Penn State, like this has been a thing even before he got to Penn State. He got kicked off his original high school football team. There's been stuff. There was a lot of stuff in the locker room at Penn State. He's kind of a loose cannon. I mean, that's kind of what you get with a guy like him. I mean, you know, another great edge rusher
comparison for good reason.
Yeah, a lot of Lawrence Taylor comparisons for not all good reasons.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it just takes a really terrible person to be that good of a player at that position.
So, yeah.
But I think the bigger thing though is the back stuff's a real concern. It's funny, you used a line from a recent Bomani episode. He also mentioned one about another player. He wasn't talking about Parsons when he said it, but I did hear him say this the other day. Ain't nobody ever used to have a bad back.
All right, fair enough.
And that's really back stuff is concerning.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we're kind of harping on the Parsons trade so much. I mean, they did make a lot of other good moves, but I mean, when you sell out for a guy like Parsons, I mean, you're putting your whole season on him. I mean, really, like what he does really is going to really have a huge impact on what they can do this year.
Yeah. If he's healthy, though, at the end of the day, like my biggest problem with it for the Cowboys, before I get into what it could be for the Packers, is by all accounts, this is something that could have been taken care of months and months ago, if they just didn't operate in the most bad faith of any bad faith that any team could possibly argue in. They just
have your agent in the room.
It just doesn't like This is a guy who is in a category
And he
only
knows
with
that.
Reggie White in terms of 12 sack seasons to start your career, 4 consecutive. It's him and White. That's it. The list ends at that point. You cannot screw around with this type of thing. Like, unless he was such a problem in the locker room, and I would argue he would have to be like legitimately like on the run for a crime at this level. Like when you're talking about this level of player, that is the only excuse you have to not have him locked up as soon as you possibly can. I'm talking after the 3rd year. You're like, hey, listen, what can we do to get this done? Even if you have to overpay him at the time, it's going to become a deal in like a year. That's what happens with contracts like this. Instead, he does the Jerry thing, gets in the news, and then he takes it so far that ultimately, for a host of reasons, he's not on the team anymore. And it is just unprecedented to have a player of this level in his mid-20s not even make it to a second contract with a team and get traded outright. It just doesn't really happen. Like,
It does.
not really with a player of his caliber. It just doesn't really.
It does.
Okay.
Though.
Okay. Are you talking about Khalil Mack? Because he at least was like, I think he was that not his second contract he was on at that time?
No, that was his. That was
I
the end
thought
of
he
his
was on a
rookie
second
deal.
contract at that point.
No, I think they used it. They might have.
Didn't they sign him to the deal and then trade him? I thought, or something like that.
No, they never
I
signed
could
him
have sworn something like
to a
that.
second contract.
Because that's the closest comparison you can make. But I thought he was already on a second deal. But I guess I'm wrong.
Nope. Nope. I think they might have screwed around with a 5th-year option. Like he might have had the 5th-year option. That might have been it. But
because like
No, it's just 4 years.
Yep.
That's
just
okay. Well, then yeah, that's definitely That's definitely.
Following Mack's holdout through the entire preseason, the Raiders traded him a 2020 second-round pick, which became Cole Kmet, and a 2020 fifth-round draft pick to the Bears for a 2019 first-round pick, a 2020 first-round pick, and a 2016 sixth-round pick, and a 2020 third-round.
So again, that would be the comparison then.
And holy cow, those names outside of Josh Jacobs are not great.
Who also didn't make it to a second contract despite being a top 5 back.
That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, like this type of thing doesn't happen very often. Like, and Mack was phenomenal. Like, even especially at the time that he was getting traded. I still think that Parsons is a better player now than Mack was. It still is like a little bit of a level up from that even. But it's also for even stupider reasons. Because at least you could argue the Raiders like straight up didn't have any cash for some reason because they're an insane organization.
I don't buy that. But that's like a whole other thing. But again,
but it's also who was the coach at that point?
Oh, God.
Gruden.
Oh, yeah,
but like,
okay, so this makes this even perfect. It wasn't like Gruden sat Mack down in his office, locked door, and was like, "Yo, so we got an agreement, right?" Without his agent present, and then went and told the media that he did it. That's the whole thing. Is Jerry Jones knows better. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It is infinitely stupider for like a lot of reasons, but I get it. The comparison is there.
But also, at best, we're comparing Jerry Jones to Mark Davis.
That's not. You don't want to be in the game of being compared to.
You don't want to be in that conversation.
Compared to Bull Cut. You don't want to be doing that. Like, I don't know. Dude looks like a Chipotle bowl every time I see him. That's what I think of. Anyway, expectations for this team, right? I mean, at this point, my expectations are probably too high. I think that they need to make the NFC title game. Like, I think that's just what it is. Like, this team has been building towards that. They had the surprise playoff run in Jordan Love's essentially rookie season, his first year starting, where they took the Niners to the brink, and then he did, of course, throw that game at the end, but whatever. And then last year, they ran into the Eagles when their healthiest receiver was like, I don't even know who it was at that point. It certainly wasn't any of the normal guys that are the twos. So, like, that was rough. This year, I think with the talent they've accumulated and the way that everything's lining up, it would be disappointing if they don't make the NFC title game.
Losses on both sides of the ball were minimum. You gained more than you lost. You didn't lose anything in the coaching staff. I mean, shoot. I know that the Eagles are probably still like.
That's why I don't say Super Bowl or bust, because it's really hard to.
But I mean, the window is now. The window is now. So if you're the Packers, you really are hoping that in the next year, if not 2 or 3, that you see them in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think NFC title game is like the bare minimum, and I think even then, if you're playing the Eagles in the NFC title game, you want to look more competitive than you did last year. I mean, they only lost by 12, but
they had
it was
nobody off.
They had no
their
shot.
offense literally basically evaporated in like mid game. Like it was insane. I kept looking up and like this receiver's out for the game. I'm like, what is going on with the Packers right now? What is happening? So yeah, it's got to be better than that. Yeah, for sure. Win total range for this team. I think I want to start with Dalton's thoughts here because you and I are both pretty high on this team in general, even before the Parsons news. So
yeah, I mean the floor. I mean, I think the floor is probably I think the rest of the division would have to be pretty good for them to hit this floor, and they would have to really like Matthew Golden would have to really not be a factor early on. Maybe 10 wins as the floor. That might even be a little too low. But I think 10 wins is a pretty high floor for just about any team in the NFL. I mean, it's kind of the nature. I mean, they're still making the playoffs at that point. I think as my ceiling, I'm going to go 14. I mean, this team could very realistically, honestly, probably run the table in their division, go 5-1 or even possibly 6-0, depending on what Detroit looks like. I think this is a team that should really be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the NFC come playoff time.
what do you think, Zach?
I'm going to drop the floor just 1 to 9. But I do agree with the ceiling being 14. This is a very good team. I think that there's just some bad bounces last year that have them in third place of the division and just like an unreal season from Minnesota. So really like this could have been the second best team in the entire division. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be right up there. It just depends on how does Detroit look? What is JJ McCarthy for the Viking? It's the Packers to lose.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to keep the floor at 9 as well, Zach. I think that in a worst case scenario where you deal with, let's say Love gets banged up a little bit again like he did last year, if Parsons isn't fully healthy the whole time because of the back, stuff like that. Like you said, Golden maybe isn't able to hit the ground running, whatever it is. Like this is too good of a team to like fall by the wayside entirely, but I think 9 wins is a pretty good floor. I'm going to say 13 for the ceiling. I still think they have two things going against them. One, the Lions are still built to beat this team. I really think so, especially with Parsons being swapped out for Kenny Clark, where Clark was probably their best run defender, honestly, in the interior at this point. They lose him and Slayton. I think the Lions' run game could be an issue for them this year, so they could easily lose both of those games. Maybe if they face them in the playoffs, you get that third game bump where like, yeah, you never know what's going to happen at that point. Hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. But that does limit their ceiling a little bit for me personally, with that division being as strong as it is. Let's move on to the Vikings, who somehow, despite being 14-3, were the second team in this division. They did not win this division. I don't think this division is going to win collectively. Like, I don't even know what it was last year, like 40-something games necessarily, but we're going to be close to that again, I think, this year. But probably hard to be 14-3 and not win the division this year. But coaching staff changes again with this team. Nothing to really talk about here. We know what this team is about at this point, especially at the coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell's done a phenomenal job since being brought over here. Like, this is one of the better coaching staffs, especially Brian Flores as defensive coordinator. For my money, best doing it in the sport right now. Like, he is one of one, in my opinion, as far as a designer of defense, especially with what he's done with, especially until last year, not a ton of talent. They definitely upped it last year, especially up front with the edge rushers. Now they add even more talent we'll talk about later. But this coaching staff really has no questions right now for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a team that I think, coaching staff, nothing notable, but the offense, we'll get into changes here. I don't know. This is you look at this depth chart and you don't understand. I don't understand how this is a 14-win team last year.
Well,
I have trouble understanding it, to be honest. And I don't know. To me, I just refuse to believe this is going to be a very good team. But they found a way last year, so it's hard to and they've been doing it for years at this point with questionable talent across the board. But we'll get into it. I mean, are we on to
Yep,
offensive
that's what we're
moves
going to be
yet?
doing right now.
Okay.
So, rundown list here. There's many to talk about. So they lose quarterback Sam Darnold, who had a very resurgent season last year, despite the very typical end to it. Unfortunately, for those who are fans of Sam Darnold, he looked a lot like his old self. Unfortunately, his last few weeks. Daniel Jones, I have on here just because it's funny. Exactly, Zach. It's very much that. Daniel Jones is now starting quarterback, so I guess I threw him on the list as a loss, but he didn't play for this team last year. Johnny Muntz, solid tight end. I threw him as a loss here. And then they lose pretty much all of their offensive line depth that they had last year at Ingram. They lose Garrett Bradbury. They lose Cam Robinson, David Questenberry. So swapping out a bunch of guys in that room we'll talk about. They did bring back Aaron Jones on a different deal. Josh Oliver's returned as well. And this is where they really start to kind of make hay, especially improving that offensive line. Ryan Kelly at center. I think still got a little bit left in the tank. We'll see if he can stay healthy. Will Fry is the same way. Big deal for him, but the games he played last year were really phenomenal games. So if you get that version of him for a full season, going to be well worth the cost that he ended up being. Traded for Jordan Mason to upgrade the running back room, especially behind Jones. And then they draft Donovan Jackson in the first round to pair with the other offensive additions. Ty Felton also here in the third round as a compensatory pick. Might have to play a little bit with some of the injuries they have right now. And suspensions. Jordan.
They also traded for Adam Thielen.
Oh, I forgot to add that. Yes, they did trade for Adam Thielen. Good for him. Thielen, here's the thing. Before we talk about anything else with this team, Adam Thielen's tape is weirdly good last year.
Oh, yeah, no, it was great.
And not when I say weirdly good, I mean it's not even like, oh, he's still able to do something. It was weirdly explosive at times. I don't really know what to do with it. I think he's going to be pretty good for this team, actually.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to be great. It's going to be what they had him originally for, and then they were like, yeah, no, good riddance. We can't pay you if you're not going to be good. Then he went away, and now he's good again. So I really hope he does well.
It's very interesting. That's one interesting move. But Dalton, I'm sure you probably want to talk about this offensive line, in particular, the first-round pick with Donovan Jackson.
Yeah, Adam Thielen is the best way to explain Adam Thielen is imagine if Jordy Nelson didn't age
that's actually a good point. I think it's more specifically he plays like he's playing with his kids in the backyard. He just is smarter than them. And he's not athletic anymore as much, but he just is always doing the right thing. And they're not.
Yeah. But he at least run.
He can. Especially with the ball in his hands, I think he can still move. It's very funny to watch at this point. Him and Bryce Young were doing some funny stuff before he went down last year. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but still, you look at this wide receiver room in day one. I mean, especially if Justin Jefferson is depending on what he's looking like week one. I mean, you got a banged up Justin Jefferson. Addison's on suspension. Then you got Adam Thielen, and then probably Ty Felton, who personally I had a 6th round grade.
Yeah, it was not a 3rd round player for me, but he'll be fine because it's the Vikings. So it's
yeah, and he's a freak athlete, but it's rough. And then the offensive line's great, though. I mean, I love the moves, especially Donovan Jackson. I feel like Donovan Jackson, honestly, when he moved to tackle last year, I thought Ohio State's offensive line as a whole got better from that move, despite the injuries. I just think he's just such a good offensive lineman overall. He's kind of a guy you can plug anywhere, and I think he'll be a leader on this team sooner rather than later. I thought that was a really good pick. I just think, they do have the offensive line's at least steady, and that's going to make up for the talent deficiencies they have pretty much everywhere else. Because, I mean, the biggest thing is J.J. McCarthy. Is he going to be what is he going to be? We have no idea. And he's a guy I think we all thought he needed some time to develop, and he did not get that last year. What is a J.J. McCarthy?
That's exactly it. I think that what this offense looks like this year versus last year is going to be the most interesting thing to start the season for me, because what we saw last year was an offense that relied heavily on big plays in the passing game from a quarterback that wants to hunt for those big plays. With J.J. McCarthy, I think it's going to be much more of a ball control, get the ball out, ask him to do too much type of offense early on, especially. How much can he be like? How much can they add to his plate by the time the playoffs come around, assuming they make it, right? That's really, I think, what's going to separate what this team could look like at the beginning of the year versus the end. How much development can you get in a 16, 17 game sample of him if he's healthy? Because you look at what he did in Michigan, he ran a team that was very much predicated on running the football, playing really good defense, which they should be able to do with Jones back and Jordan Mason as a combo. I think is good. The defense, we know what they're capable of. Can he keep that play style that he's already well established being able to do long enough to have them add those extra things to his plate? Ask him to make the big plays down the field. Ask him to do more things than he's really shown to be able to in the past. If that happens, who knows how good this team might be on offense with the talent that they have, especially once Addison's back and if Jefferson's healthy and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see how they kind of take care of that here.
Oh, yeah.
Defensively, a lot of things to talk about here too, especially up front. So they do lose Cam Bynum, which I do think is pretty, like, for a guy that not a lot of people would view as like a big time player, like a really big loss for this team potentially, because he kind of is what made that back end work in a lot of ways with what they ask of that back end group, especially with what Brian Flores likes to do. So we'll see how they kind of mitigate that. Jared Tillery he played. He's, whatever. Javon Bullard as well, the interior. Yeah. Patrick Jones is an edge rusher, was a solid third edge type of guy. But they have first round pick last year that I can't. Dallas Turner that can handle that. Stephon Gilmore and Shaquille Griffin gone at corner. Definitely trying to get younger there. They do bring back Byron Murphy though, which I was worried they were going to lose him because he was really their only like bona fide like actual good corner last year that I felt good about, and glad that they were able to bring him back on a solid deal. They extend Andrew Van Ginkel for another year beyond what he already had. Harrison Smith is still around here. Theo Jackson is going to be the other safety now potentially. And then the additions here, the two biggest ones, especially literally big ones, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave on the interior. Both older players, but guys who, if they're healthy, should be much better than what they were getting out of this group last year. You throw in Eric Wilson as a depth linebacker, Isaiah Rodgers as another outside corner, Jeff Okudah, I don't know about that. He's in line to start right now. Javier Thomas, and then a couple of late round picks in Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins on the interior, and Kobe King, who you know well, Dalton, as a linebacker, did make the team. Good for him.
Don't know how.
Good
I don't know what he's going to do.
Well, I think they're hoping he's just bigger and worse Ivan Pace. So maybe that's what it is. But that's all the moves defensively to note. Definitely the big ones here as far as impacts, I think, is going to be the interior guys, and potentially, if he's as good as I hope he could be, maybe Isaiah Rodgers at the opposite corner.
Well, and then re-signing AVG is
extending him more,
keeping him with them. Well, extending, yeah, because that was they got him on a bargain, and I am still
your edge group is good if they're healthy, but they're not. Sorry,
But I mean, the man is just insane. He talk about like Minkah Fitzpatrick ball magnet level. Like he is just everywhere.
Yeah.
He is just always making a play. He's always disrupting, and so really good to keep him there. You really shore up in the middle. And again, we're looking at these three teams: trenches. You just have to keep addressing the trenches because you got to be able to give your guys time. And on the opposite side, you got to get to these quarterbacks. You can't let them be comfortable. So it's good to see that they're looking to shut that down, as well as the ridiculously powerful rushing options that we have in this division as well, because we haven't really we talked about that a little bit, but I mean, the rushing game plays a big factor in this division with Jahmyr Gibbs and then Aaron Jones here. I forget who.
Josh Jacobs, of course.
But
Dalton's offended. He wants everyone to remember how
Josh Jacobs
be all the time. We have Ashton out there.
Which you really They're addressing both sides, so that way we are checking both boxes. Yes, you have to get your offense more time, but you also have to get that defensive pressure, so that way that these other offenses aren't wreaking havoc on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to check this real quick because I was curious. I was almost 100% sure that this was the case, but Andrew Van Ginkel had the most coverage snaps among edge defenders last year with over 200. Second place, ironically, Michael Hoyt, who is about as different of a player as you can get. But I think that was just a quirk of the Rams defense because Byron Young also was second or third at that point. So they just be doing that shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Van Ginkel's definitely a fun player. Grenard also kind of quietly maybe a top 8 edge rusher last year just off of the actual numbers. Don't know if he'll be able to continue to keep that pace up or anything, but was phenomenal for them last year. So we'll see if he can keep that up. But I do think the defense with Brian Flores, like they have enough talent here to keep this train rolling. He is just maybe one of the biggest assets that isn't a player in the league, especially considering his situation where he's certainly not getting a head coaching job anytime soon with his whole thing with the league. So like you kind of just stay with you as long as you.
Is that still active?
I think it's still active. Yeah, pretty sure it hasn't been settled yet. So he's probably not going to be a head coach anytime soon, but good for the Vikings in that situation. All right, expectations. This is one of the harder ones in the league because this is a 14-3 team last year that, granted, kind of shit the bed the end of the year, and then now they don't have the same quarterback anymore, so the expectations might need to change a lot anyway. But I think for me, like, I just want to find out if J.J. McCarthy is the quarterback for this team, and then also, in the meantime, doing that, don't completely fall off the map and not make the playoffs. I think it's kind of the expectations of what it should be. Like, be good enough, whatever his limitations are, to get back in the dance and hopefully be better prepared to actually win a game once you get there by the time that you get there. I think that's my expectations.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think playoffs would be a reasonable expectation, or at least 9 wins, I think. And I think the point is you don't want to be losing games because you lost Sam Darnold.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest expectation.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. I do think that there needs to be some grace given to McCarthy, given that all we've seen is a singular preseason appearance. And then he tore his meniscus. So, like, I don't think he's going to be able to walk in and just be, like, amazing. I think there's going to be some growing pains and have some time where he needs to learn. But, again, it's going to be one thing if it's in the beginning and not causing many issues, if you're able to, like, cover that up with how good the rest of the team is. If it's cause for concern that you couldn't move forward with JJ McCarthy, then it's going to look a little bit rough letting not even just Sam Darnold, but Daniel Jones out the door when you could have maybe given him the time to start and let
a couple games.
McCarthy do
I agree.
more.
Daniel Jones. Carson Wentz season, guys, anyone? Max Brosmer?
Is he the backup?
Wentz is the backup right now, yeah.
Hey, Brosmer didn't look
I have maybe my funniest take that I sort of somewhat believe is there's like a non-zero chance that Brosmer is better than JJ McCarthy, and not when I say non-zero as in like I reserve that for under 5% chance. So it's not really a take even. It's just like a funny thing to say, but like he kind of fits the offense perfectly. I don't know if he's ever going to be a downfield threat as a passer really, but everything else he's pretty good at. It's kind of weird skill set, but I like him.
I mean, it can't be much worse than like Carson Wentz.
Hey, listen, if any quarterback could disappoint on this team, it'd be Carson Wentz. How bad do you think Sam Howell was in practice that they had to get rid of him and then sign Carson Wentz? Does anyone want to venture a guess on what that was looking like?
Didn't they trade him?
I'm so upset about that because he didn't seem that bad in Washington, and I don't know what happened.
The Eagles traded for him. They gave up assets to get him.
Well, they're already used to a guy who invites way too much pressure despite having a good offensive line, so maybe they're okay with it. It's a slight shot, Jay. It's fine.
But like, he's even going to be the third string quarterback. I just don't get it.
I don't know. Listen, the Eagles be doing shit. I just assume it's the right thing until it's not. We'll see. He'll end up having to start a game for some reason. He'll be fine, and then we'll be like, oh, it's worth it. Whatever. I don't care. Whatever. Win total range for this Vikings team. I want to hear Zach's here first.
I think the wheels could fall off on this a little bit. I hesitate to say that that's like a breakdown of expectations because I don't think that's fair to JJ McCarthy. But for the rest of the team, that's going to be a failure of expectations. I don't think it's fair to latch that onto him. because they are inflated. We're doing this again based off one preseason appearance where we're like, oh yeah, he's going to be really good. So like, I'm excited. I'm hopeful that they're going to be good. And I think that as far as like a ceiling, you could probably see them getting to be like 10, 11 wins. But I think the wheels could fall off. He doesn't have nearly the easy transition that we think. And this is like a 5-6 win team. And like the defense holds up, but defense is gonna. I am a testament to this. Defense is gonna only hold so long until they're on the field gassed out and the offense is doing nothing. They shouldn't be able to do nothing because you have some really good assets here. But if he just can't do it, and you're forced to see a Wentz or a Max Brosmer season, like it could get bad.
Fair enough. What do you think about Dalton?
Yeah, I mean the floor. I think I'm really like worried that the floor is like 6 or 7 wins. I mean I'll go 6 just because I could see it being, I don't know, 6. I find it hard to believe it could be worse than 6, but I mean, say Justin Jefferson ends up like having trouble staying healthy this year, and then Adam Thielen looks 35.
Jordan Addison's speed's 120 miles an hour.
And the offense is, and Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, are average at best.
They're one of the running back.
They're replacement level running backs, and the offense is basically just J.J. McCarthy throwing to T.J. Hawkinson 130 times this year. Yeah. And I mean, they're a 6-win team. It could be. I mean, it could look like a rookie quarterback season, very quickly. But I mean, the ceiling, I think, if McCarthy is almost as good as Darnold last year, which I think Darnold looked out of his mind. And I also think a lot went right for them. Yeah. I think the ceiling's probably 12 wins. And that's if the Vikings turn out to be geniuses, I think 12 wins is pretty impressive in this division.
Yeah, I think for me, the floor, I'm going to set at 7. I think that there's a little too much overall talent on this team and too many established coaches and players for me to think that it really falls apart that badly. But we are talking about essentially a rookie quarterback who I do have questions about. There's a lot of people who are unbelievably bullish on him, like already willing to say he's going to be a top 10 player at his position. I've seen that conversation turn around. I'm not even going to bother with that. But the point is there's a world where he very much looks like a guy who isn't ready to handle the responsibilities of taking a team to the playoffs, and they just can't quite get it done. But I do think the 12-win ceiling is there because if he's just the NFL version of what he was in college, which is a really good game manager who is phenomenal on third downs and got to have it situations, that's probably a 12-win team with this roster, right? Like, because you don't have that issue of like, well, what do we do about pressure? Because he is very athletic. He is going to be able to escape. And Darnold was too, but he just, frankly, when he was pressured, he acted like he didn't know what the sport was anymore. So that's a whole other problem. I think McCarthy's probably going to, by default, be a little bit better under pressure than that. But let's get into the final team to talk about here, the reigning NFC North champs. And I think a team that some people are starting to kind of doubt a little bit because of the just brain drain of losing their coordinators. But other people are like, this is still Dan Campbell we're talking about, and he's the driving force behind this. But talking about, of course, the Detroit Lions here. 15-2 last year. Unbelievably so, even maybe more so than the Vikings, because by the end of the season, I couldn't tell you who was starting at half the spots on defense. I'm pretty sure Amik Robertson was like one of their best players for a minute there. I don't know how that works. Yeah. So good, good for him, I guess. But they were really passionate together by the end, man. And like, it was tough. But they end up losing to the Commanders. We'll see if they can maybe bounce back a little bit with a little bit better health, hopefully. This is unfortunately a team, unfortunately for them, that we do have to talk about the coaching staff changes because, again, as I mentioned previously, they lose offensive coordinator Ben Johnson to the Bears as their head coach and the defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn to the Jets to be their head coach. You lose 2 coordinators in the same year, both of whom to go become head coaches. That's usually not a great thing. It just usually isn't, to be fair. That is a lot of talent at coach to lose here. Got to get my Lions hat on, of course, because I have it. Get that on here. Don't have the Bears yet, but I'll tell you what, if the Bears win 9 games, I'll buy a Bears hat. No. They bring in John Morton, who was with this organization in 2022 to be their new offensive coordinator, was the Broncos passing game coordinator this past year, which did admittedly do a good job with the rookie Bo Nix, and promoted Kelvin Shepard, who as recently as 2018 was playing linebacker in the NFL, to be a defensive coordinator for this team, handpicked here. I do think there's a reason for that. I do think he's going to try to keep what Aaron Glenn has been doing going. So that makes a lot of sense as well. But just a lot of unknown here, right? Especially with Shepard as a young coach here trying to be a defensive coordinator. And the only offensive coordinator job John Morton has had was that when that terrible, I think was it the Eagles team that was just not good on offense? I want to say he was the coach of. I can't even remember. I looked it up earlier, but he has not had much experience as an offensive coordinator in the NFL either. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
I'm actually kind of excited about the Kelvin Shepard move. I think that was a perfect replacement. He's been with the organization since 2021.
Yeah, he's been around this whole time.
Outside linebacker,
so he knows what it's about.
And yeah, he's been there the whole time. He's stayed with them. And I think really, if you're still with this organization, I do believe that he's had that Campbell's had to let a few people go and be like, I got to make some changes and stuff like that. If you're still there and you're still doing stuff, I think you're like a very valuable piece to this franchise. And I mean, especially as we just saw with both Johnson and Glenn going on to being head coaches. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad replacement there. It'll be interesting to see how the John Morton works out. That one I'm not as psyched about, but this is also a weird spot to where Dan Campbell isn't an offense or a defensive coach. He's a special teams coach. So he toes that weird line to where all right, what is going to happen here with your offense now to where you don't have somebody that's specific, because they lost quarterbacks coach too. Correct.
I think it was passing game quarter. Tanner Engstrand is gone. I forget if they also lost the quarterback coach or not. I have to look it up.
Did someone follow Glenn?
That was Engstrand. He's the offensive coordinator. He was the passing game coordinator, I believe, last year. So
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how much the offense struggles with a lot more. I feel like it's going to have a lot more turnover than the defense, because I don't feel like Glenn poached as much offensive staff as Johnson did, or defensive staff as Johnson poached offensive. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, it's still Dan Campbell. It's still the Lions. I don't think it's necessarily going to hinder them as much as we think it will, because it's still a veteran team. It's not like you have a young team.
Yeah, Morton's the interesting hire. Just looking at his path to here, he hasn't really been an offensive coordinator in the NFL since 2017, and that was the
Jets. That was that terrible Jets team.
Yeah, it was not good. He did not last long, but he has bounced around a lot of different places over the last 20 years as an offensive assistant, and he's been in a lot of creative rooms. Spent a lot of time under Lane Kiffin at USC, and spent time with Sean Payton. I mean, obviously Ben Johnson. He's kind of been around the block. He was an assistant under John Gruden as well. He's seen a lot of different stuff, and I think the creativity is still going to be what it's been in Detroit under Ben Johnson. I think you're still going to see a lot of offensive creativity. For me, it's the play calling and the situational play calling that I think, Ben Johnson did a very good job of. And I just think that's hard to, figure out right away as an offensive coordinator. I think that takes time and to really get a feel for the game. That's probably the biggest concern for me, is that, I think it's going to be hard to replicate what Ben Johnson was doing. But overall, I think there's enough stability on this coaching staff, and a lot of these are internal hires, that I don't think, like Zach said, not a ton is going to change.
Yeah, I don't think that much about how the offense actually operates is going to change. I do wonder if they're going to start leaning a little bit away from the 12 personnel stuff because Denver specifically did very little of that last year. Now, they didn't have the talent at tight end to really run that as much, but I do wonder if we see a little bit more 11 personnel, especially if they really like Tesla, the rookie receiver we'll talk about when we talk about offensive moves. He seems to be a guy that they really were a big fan of, both in the draft and since he's been with the organization, has really made some plays in the preseason. So if they think he's ready to go, and they think that obviously St. Brown and James Williams are still, going to be the duo they were last year, they could lean into that a little bit more. But I do think for the run game purposes, we'll probably see a lot of the same stuff, right? Probably heavy emphasis on outside zone like they've had. And with Montgomery coming back, you'll have more ability to vary that up a little bit and let Gibbs not have to carry the ball quite as much. So, we'll see what they do there.
I thought I would be able to make it through the whole thing, but I think I'm going to have to dip out just because I'm not feeling it. But I just, as my little thingy said, one pride, all in on the Lions this year. I still hope that they're going to be the pride of, as some are calling them, America's real team, because they were sorry for so long. So I'm really hoping that they do well. I think that they have the opportunity to, and it's really going to be a competition between them and the Packers to see who is going to win this division. But I hate to dip out early, but I definitely have to get some rest before I go and teach the kiddos tomorrow.
You are good, Zach. I know you got a little bit of cough going, so definitely have a good night, and Dalton and I will finish it out here.
Yeah, when you teach 195 sixth graders, they get you sick. So
fair enough.
It's what it is. All right, I'll see y'all later.
All right, we'll see it. All right, talking about offensive moves here, Dalton. We're gonna move on to what they had.
What is that?
if you can hear that, dog, it's my cat is sounding insane right now. I don't know what she.
I get that. We have a cat that is also pretty loud purr.
Yeah, I don't know what he's up to right now. Anyway, I'm not gonna worry about it. We talked about coaching staff, offensive moves here. The two big ones, especially losses, are on the offensive line here. You lose Frank Ragnow to retirement. He's been battling through a lot of stuff. It wasn't surprising to see him hanging up at this point. And then you do lose Kevin Zeitler as well, who was a really good guard for them last year, despite his age. He's now with the Titans, hoping that he can do the same thing for them that he did for the Lions last year. So new look offensive line a little bit here. They do bring back Khalif Raymond and running back Craig Reynolds on offense, both guys that have their roles a little bit, especially Raymond is like return guy, deep threat, kind of slot guy as well. And in the draft, they bring in Tate Ratledge to be one of the guards here. Mentioned him earlier, Isaac Tesla to be the outside receiver opposite James Williams, and then backup offensive lineman Miles Frazier, who is a later round pick. I do wonder about the offensive line a little bit with this team. That's kind of, I think, the biggest question mark that they have that they didn't have last year. With this, this offensive line has been phenomenal for several years now. I do think there's more room for it to regress a little bit this year, especially with Ragnow being gone.
Yeah, I agree. There's kind of a lot. I mean, they made a ton of moves. You're relying on a rookie and Ratledge to come in and be a major contributor. Also, going to see a lot more of 2024 6th round pick Christian Mahogany.
Yes,
which
really good 2 starts last year that he got to play. So you hope that he's good.
Yeah,
but he is a question mark.
And then, the tackles are at least solid. I think Decker and Sewell are good enough. But inside's looking rough. You're replacing a lot, and
that's the problem.
And that's not this. It seems like they were a little bit prepared for some of these moves. Like they did seem to have a plan, which is nice. But again, you get a lot riding on a 6th round pick to come in his second year and really be a major piece of that offensive line. I just think, if it works, great. But it's hard. I don't know. The offense is just between the coaching changes and the talent. I love the Tesla addition, but I don't know. Like the offensive line, when you're replacing offensive line and offensive play calling, it's hard not to see this offense regressing. And the offense was such a big part of this team's success last year.
Yeah.
it's hard to feel good about the Lions. It sucks that like it feels like their window is already closing, and it just opened a year ago.
It's funny you say that because whenever they lost to the Niners in the NFC title game a couple years ago now,
Yeah.
one of the things Dan Campbell said after that game was that it just sucks because you never know if you'll be back. And they're running into a situation now where like last year injuries completely took away their chance of being competitive in the playoffs. And now the attrition in offensive coaching and offensive line does at least threaten the chance that they're going to be able to do it this year. I do think what you're hoping for, if you're a Lions fan, is that the offensive line is not tremendously worse and the offensive coaching is at least close to the level it's been in terms of the play calling, and you can get maybe a top 10 offense instead of a top 3 offense. Because this defense, admittedly, if everyone's healthy, should be in a better position to carry some of the load than it was last year. And so maybe you don't have to have a top 3 offense to have a multi or double digit win season, right? That's I think what they're kind of hoping for is that they can at least stay really, really good on offense. Maybe just not the just absolute heater they were on for most of last year, right? Like that's I think the best hope for them this year.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Yeah. Let's talk about the defensive moves. Speaking of the defense here, they lose edge Zadarius Smith, who didn't give them a ton last year, but they really could use the depth. He might be back at some point, in my opinion.
It's not a spot where they could afford to lose anything.
Right, that's the thing. So I wouldn't be surprised. He's still unsigned as far as I've seen recently. I think if he came back, I wouldn't be surprised. Carlton Davis, they swap out with DJ Reed. We'll talk about him in a second. Ifeatu Melifonwu is now a Dolphin, I believe. If I remember correctly. They re-sign Levi and Wuzurike, who unfortunately is out for the season with an injury, so they will not see him this year. They bring back Marcus Davenport, who might as well already be an injured reserve. He just hasn't yet. Unfortunately for him, he's played, I think, 4 games the past 2 years, maybe. He's currently their starting edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson as well, which I simply don't understand, but whatever. Bring back Al-Qadim Muhammad as edge depth, linebacker Derek Barnes, who might have to play a little bit off the edge for this team, to be honest with you. He did it in college. Maybe he'll have to do it this year. They signed Kirby Joseph to a massive extension, well-deserved, based on his level of play. Bring in Roy Lopez to help bolster the interior defensive line. DJ Reed, I mentioned as well, will be the new starting corner, opposite of, I assume, Terran Arnold will still be the starter there. Vontae Maddox was brought in. I don't even remember if he made the roster, to be honest with you, but he was an interesting add. And then they also brought in the draft Tyleik Williams and edge Ahmad Hassanin. So I think he's on the practice squad currently for them.
Yeah.
I am unsure of how good this defense can be, but I do think that if they're healthy, they could be very, very good if the defensive coaching remains good with Shepard coming in here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good pieces. I mean, up and down at every level, they at least have a couple solid pieces. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson up front. And I think adding Tyleik Williams there, I don't know how much he's going to give you against the run, but I think he's at least going to be a really good pass rusher in the NFL. I think it's interesting. I feel the exact opposite. I feel like he has 0 pass rush ability, but is one of the best run defenders in the draft. Is with Tyleik Williams. I had the exact opposite feeling with him. For me, I mean, I don't know. I think he can at least push the pocket. I think
he's got power, but he just showed 0 interest in him on tape, in my opinion, to actually rush the passer. He was all about just stuffing the run, which they need that with McNeil out for a little bit, but McNeil's the guy that they need to be back to rush the passer, I think. We'll see when he can get back, but he's on the pup list, I think, to start the year.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I worry about rookies being.
It's a lot to ask.
I think rookies being able to maintain gaps, especially rookie interior guys. It's just a really hard thing. I feel like you kind of need that grown man strength a little bit to really maintain gap control. I think it's a lot easier to ask a rookie to just, pin your ears back and shoot through and try to create havoc. I just think it's hard for rookies to really be a run stuffer. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of the good run stuffing D tackles in the league right now are 30 plus. It's just a weird position where sometimes age kind of helps, and also just knowing where to be and knowing kind of how to cheat some situations. It's a weird spot, but overall, I do think, I agree. I think there's a lot of potential on this defense. I just also worry that, like, it's very thin at every position.
Yeah,
and
the
I don't
depth is
think the
going to
draft
be
was, I don't think the draft got them the depth they needed, especially on the edge.
No. It's going to be interesting because, like, if Hutchinson is healthy, it probably doesn't matter a ton who's the second edge rusher. Like, I think that he alone, with what he looked like last year, if he's that version of himself, will make this a good pass rush. When McNeil gets back, I think the interior will be plenty good at rushing the passer. But if early on, if it's pretty much just Hutchinson running around out there by himself, the secondary, I do like Degenerate. I think he was one of the best man cover corners in the NFL last year, and that's what this defense is all about. You hope Terrion Arnold is a better player this year as well. Robertson admittedly looked pretty good last year when they asked him to play. So, like,
and now last year he was playing a little bit more outs. Like, he was basically their number two.
He was, which was insane to think about, but it worked.
Weird. So he's a guy that I do think his best position is as a nickel.
Yeah, which is where he's at right now, to be fair.
But he's looked better. He's had some of his best games of his career playing outside.
I have an idea why, but I'm curious. What do you think?
I mean, he was an outside corner his whole college career.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of it. And I mean, he's really a cover corner that's built like a nickel. I mean, that's really what it is. He's a true outside cover corner.
He has the mentality, right? It's like he wants to just beat the shit out of receivers. He just doesn't have the body to do it.
Yeah.
So he just tries anyway. And sometimes it works. And you're like, holy shit, what was that about? And, like, when it works, you're like, whoa, all right. Yeah. And then when it doesn't, you're like, okay, well, he's 5'8".
He's the guy that pretty much your only options for him are having him stick a small receiver or stick him back in a deep third.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, but he was good for them last year. But I do think this defense, like, the safety duo, is just disgusting. Like, that's the thing about this defense that is most interesting to me, because, like, Branch, I was a little bit worried moving him out of the slot would, like, limit his impact a little bit. No, he's just now, like, one of the best safeties in the sport. It's like, all right, cool. And then Kirby Joseph, maybe, especially with the decline of Minka Fitzpatrick, outside of Jesse Bates, probably the best just true, like, center fielding safety in the NFL right now. Like, it's the range, and he's gotten better as a tackler, the 9 interceptions last year, which that's, never going to expect 9 interceptions every year, but, like, the ball skills, like, just in really good season. And I think he was paid very handsomely for a reason. I think if they get enough green lights on this defense with what they need to happen, I think that this team could repeat as champions of this division and could look really, really good going into the playoffs opposed to last year if the health holds up. Let's talk about expectations there for 2025. I think for a lot of people, it's hard to really determine this because of how much turnover there is on the coaching staff and some of the important pieces on both sides of the ball. But I think at this point, they've kind of gotten to a point where if you don't have them making or getting close to the NFC title game, then it's going to be a disappointment with how much they've risen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I only see regression here.
That's
and I think really, if your fan expectations are that they at least are able to still be a playoff team, I think that's really the only thing you can kind of hope for here. And it might be more of a hope than an expectation, because, I mean, this team, I think, is the window's closing quickly. And the problem is their team that kind of was in win now mode, and now they just don't have the draft capital to rebuild right away. And I just think they're going to need to start figuring out how to do a soft reset. I don't know if they need to completely change everything, but then again, Jared Goff isn't getting any younger.
He's not. The way he plays, I think he can probably stick around for a while, but it's true. Like, he's played his way into, like, the firm franchise quarterback, but you probably want to start thinking about what that looks like in 2 or 3 years, though.
Yeah, so. And also, like, I mean, he's been solid. He is a franchise quarterback at this point, but definitely on the back end of, the franchise.
Yeah, like the true franchise quarterbacks. Yeah, like the guys who are both old enough to know what they are, but also not so old that they're on their way out. Like that kind of like tier. He's definitely the back end of that. Let's do win total range here before we get out of here. I'm actually going to not be here for 2 hours for once, which is nice.
I know.
I think the floor is lower than it's been for the Lions past couple of years because of the changes, obviously. I still think like this feels very similar to like, and I think Dan Campbell's become the better version of this, but it feels a lot like the Steelers where like they're not going to be a bad football team no matter what they look like. Like I think this is like a 9-win floor for this team. I think the offense still has so many of the pieces that made it special, and I think the defense should be. I mean, it cannot be less healthy than last year. I mean, there's just no. If they're as injured as they were last year on defense, like they should just pack it up and move or something. Yeah. Like you got to get out of that stadium if that happens to you 2 years in a row. So I think 9 is a good floor for them, but I do think the ceiling is about 12 as well. I think they could have a really good season, but not the heights they reached last year. Because I just think the overall ceiling has been knocked down a peg or two because of the departures they've had.
Yeah, I'm kind of right around there as far as the floor goes. I'm a little lower. I'm at 8 wins just because I can see a losing record. I think just barely, just because if they do have injuries, there's just no depth.
Yeah, the depth is concerning. Yeah,
but I do think like they're very similar to the Vikings. I think the main difference between them and the Vikings is the Vikings have a rookie. The Lions have Jared Goff, and I think that's a huge thing when you have a big coaching staff. But 12 wins feels like the ceiling for this team, especially in that division. Like, I mean, they're probably going to lose 2 games. They're going to lose minimum 2 games in their own division. I mean, more than likely.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if any team, like I know the Packers have the potential to, but like the Lions are the one team in the division where I'm not super confident they're going to beat them, especially twice, just because of the run game that they have there.
Yeah,
even with some of the differences, like Packers pass rush is going to be very good. The run defense without Kenny Clark could be a problem at times, at least. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I agree with you for the most part there. What I do think my pick right now is going to be the Packers to win the division. Just throwing that out there. I do think they have the best combination of like up and coming players. They're ascending at this point in time. They just added one of the best players in the NFL, assuming he's healthy. But the Lions are just, again, they've really put it to this division the past couple of years, and I'm curious if they can find a way to do it again. So I think those are the 2 front runners. The Vikings, I want to say that they could have another surprise season like they did last year, but I do think a lot of this season is going to be about figuring out who J.J. McCarthy is. Again, what is a J.J. McCarthy? And I do think, again, the Bears should be much more watchable, should be much more fun. I don't know how much actually better, though, right, as far as the record goes. So.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. I mean, Green Bay is probably going to win this division. I just think they're the one. I think they're the one team that got better out of the big 3 in that division from last year. I think they're the one that firmly got better.
Yes, yeah. So hard to pick against them right now, but that'll do it for us. We might, depending on if I can get someone available, might have the AFC North preview before the season actually officially kicks off on Thursday night. That would be tomorrow around 8 before our betting show if we can get it done. If not, we'll try to make sure we get that out before the AFC North plays any actual games. We'll see if we can do that. But if not, definitely check us out again tomorrow on our betting show. It'll be the first week of true NFL betting that we have outside of the features we've done. That should be a lot of fun. I, of course, if you've watched that show in the past, will be doing my traditional every game parlay for the fun of it. That'll be very funny. I'm sure I'll find a way to make that ridiculous and only be able to bet like 2 cents on it to be able to actually be allowed to make the bet. But definitely look out for that